right. Yep. All right. Welcome to Fight the Funk podcast. This is Magic Collins, aka Magic Man. We are exploring mental health, culture, and the world around us. And today we got Latonya Davis. She is an anti-racism teacher, and we're gonna be figuring out what's this about, what we talking about. So without further ado, let's bring on Dr. Davis. Hello. How you doing?
Hi, how you doing? I'm doing well.
Good. Yeah, we had a little some changes to make this morning. I'm glad you're able to still make it though.
Yes, I am as well.
Man, the Central Standard Time, Pacific Standard Time. I am trying to wrap
It's all good. I knew the difference. I was like, I don't know if he wants to get up that early.
Yeah, you hit me up. I was like, wait a minute. Yeah, I was actually talking to somebody else. I was like, wait a minute, it's not time yet. So, but yeah, I'm glad it worked out. So, I was actually able to sit through one of your presentations.
Mm-hmm.
And how long did it take you to put that together?
Oh, I've been doing that for years. I'm a lawyer by trade, and then I went into education. So it's very easy for me to put together the presentations. I'm very motivated by the work that I do. And because it dealt with anti-racism, I wanted to make sure people were really, that was very clear about what you can do in schools to really support students who are African-American.
Okay. And then, so what is the, so when you approach it, when you create it, like, how do you kind of go about like explaining it? So say like, what's the elevator pitch if somebody doesn't know, or
that's a good question. Actually, there's so many things I've done in education because I have worked in K through 12 as either a school leader or a teacher or coach, and I've trained principals. One of the things I think about are who are the educators that are in the room, who's the audience, who do I need to make sure understands the presentation. And because I'm one of few people that I know that has that wide variety of experience, I'm able to go ahead and think about what are really my outcomes. And my outcomes are really about making sure people understand what these words mean. They understand what best practices are and the rationale behind them, so they can really be able to walk away with something they can actually take to their districts, or whether it's a company or what have you, so they understand like how to do this work. I also like to be creative. I know this is a very serious topic, but I'm a joyful person. I like to laugh. I like to enjoy. And so I embedded a little bit of joy in there with opportunities to listen to music and also just kind of reflect on the practice itself. So I've been doing these presentations for a number of years now. And every time I get just very excited when people show up and they're interested and they want to learn more because they want to do better.
Yeah. Now, so how did that change once? Because you were doing it. I find it interesting the people that were doing the work before last year, before it became like such a massive and global movement.
Right.
You've been working diligently for years. So how did that kind of change everything for you this year or last year?
Yeah, for me, personally and professionally, it didn't really change. I was already doing this work. So I didn't have to go back and look at curriculum because I was already writing and creating curriculum for students. For example, when I taught social studies, I was able to write the curriculum and I was able to present it to my team. But within that, I brought in my own experiences. So, in law school, we learned the IRAC method of how you read cases. And so I brought that into the classroom and taught my students how to critically think. I also brought in moot court, which is not something that everybody is able to do or skilled to do, but it is a really great opportunity to bring this in, to actually read the actual language of the Constitution, not a secondary source, but let's read the Constitution. Let's see what it says. Let's see what it doesn't say. And then we have some cases that you all can argue with me being your judge and being able to what you have to say. So it was always there. I think what changed was me having to think through, for people who haven't done it before, like, how do I get you to understand the rationale behind it, the importance behind it, and how do I get you to recognize your own privilege when it comes to doing this work, and blockers and things that may prevent you from really understanding the need to do the work. It's not just curriculum work.
Yeah.
It's also just about who's on the team. Are African Americans in leadership in school positions? Are they at the regional level, the CFO level, chief academic officer level? Are they in those positions where it would matter who's at the table, because those conversations are going to be able to let people hear what we think about what kids need to have. When you don't have those spaces at the table, that their perspective is not heard. And so where do they come into play, especially in cases where you do have students who are majority African American, Black or brown students. You need to have representation at those tables.
Okay. Now with that, do you have time that what do you do, like as far as, do you get like a lot of pushback? What do you do when you get the pushback? Like, we don't need anti-racism. What are we talking about? Let's not talk about it. Let's move on. Blah. When you get that kind of thing.
Yeah, I have my little one in the background too, so you might hear some stimming as well.
It's all good. It's all good. He like, hey man.
It's okay. He's like, go ahead. That's part of what I do too. I teach my own one at home. But I say, that work, that's the part that is challenging, to say the least, because I have run into individuals who are non-African American, and I'm going to specifically non-African American, who may be Latino, who may be Caucasian, who do not necessarily recognize their attitudes around race. And so they don't necessarily see it as an issue. They may believe that they're doing the right thing, or they believe that, and people around them believe that that's what they do. But I've already run into people who've said, I don't want you to talk about race.
Yeah.
It's interesting, because I'm like, in the space of anti-racism, that topic has got to come up, because we got to talk about it. I think the other part that comes into play is when you have individuals who, they only want to do the work that relates to, let's look at the curriculum and let's do that part, but they don't want to do the internal work, or they don't want to discuss that internal work that has to happen in order to become an anti-racist. So for instance, you got to go back and ask yourself, what was your first experience with race? I had a really good trainer, Dr. Yolanda Seeley Ruiz from Teachers College, who came and did a really good training that I attended this year. And it was really great to see her talk about the archaeology of self. But essentially, there's so much information out there. You just Google it, questions you can ask yourself personally. How did your family and your school influence you? What was your upbringing like? What kind of school did you go to? Did they only celebrate Martin Luther King holiday? I mean, so those are questions you can ask yourself, because that is what determines the lens by which you do your work. And you can, think through those different scenarios and events and people that have influenced you in your life. You can kind of track back to the root cause of why you believe what you believe, or why you don't really see certain things. And then when you do that, you can begin to start thinking about, what are the next action steps that I can sort of take. And I think, and so I think that's one piece, that you can't make someone do that. But if every single person in this country did that, who were non-African American, they could understand the reason behind Black Lives Matter and why we want to ensure that we receive equity and justice.
And that's where I do believe there's a little kind of intellectual dishonesty, where it's kind of like you don't want to believe it, or don't want to see it and see the work that needs to be done. Now, so this work is Undoing Racism K through 12. And during your presentation, you had like a 3-part process, where it's structural, institutional, and individual and implicit bias. Like, how does that work for somebody, for kids, where some of this information can be it's as dense as we want to get. So when you are working with kids, K through 12, like how do you approach that? And I think that also helps with just people that just working like 2 jobs, where it's like, I can't keep up with this, man. Like, how do you approach that?
Welcome to the world of my ancestors. This is what we do for so long, and so now you're walking into the world that might be different than what you're used to. But I do think that it's a requirement if you truly want to make this country be what it was intended to be. And that is a place where people of any race, creed, color, what have you, can come and be in a space where they can, they can live out, the ideals of the DOI, which is life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, which is what my mission is with the work that I do. But I think that part of it is just, honestly, it's just best practice. When you're in a classroom with students, it's general common courtesy to say good morning.
Yeah.
To say hello. Hey, we had breakfast this morning, just the typical things you would do. And then there's the other piece where you can also think about building relationship. And that's where I think everything boils down to that relationship. So even us having this conversation or me talking with different people, it's about the connection that's made. Because think of it, if we're with our families, we have connections with them. And sometimes you might have an argument, you might fall out, but you come right back together because you're family and you have that relationship, that connection that's there. Mm-hmm. So if people can start thinking about ways that we can connect on commonalities, then that gets us to the conversations we need to have around race. Mm-hmm. Some people think that it's just like such a bad word. It's not. It's just the reality of the situation that we have. And it's important for us to engage in conversations so that we understand where each other is coming from, so that we can do more. And I think that you see that through children. I mean, children are ultimately the most precious resource, I think, on the planet, besides water and food. Clearly, I'm in Texas, so having the Arctic storm. But children are the people who learn from us. We model it, what we say, what we do, what we don't say, what we don't do. And so ultimately, it's really about how are we engaging, how are we treating our kids when they're in the school system, day in and day out. And so I think that people have to just kind of ask yourself, even when you do lesson planning, a lot of people, I know I used to have my teachers when I would coach them, it's like, look at your lesson plan. You annotate it. Did you account for every kid in your classroom? Or is this lesson plan just for you just like one group? You have multiple kids in your classroom with multiple needs. So you have to also think about those kids that might have IEPs. Do we have accommodations and modifications in that lesson for those students? Are we considering how we want to bring joy into the classroom? Do they like coming to your class every day? So I could talk forever.
I was like, because I always, when I talk, I'm trying to relate it to say, like, if we were on the bus stop or at a bus stop, and I was like, hey, what's up? Like, what do you do? And you were like, oh yeah, I'm teaching anti-racism. And I was like, what in the world? So say, like, how could somebody just off the street kind of go with what they learn from you, kind of apply that to at their job, where it's like, there might be the only Black person.
Yeah.
They have to kind of push that, but they feel that need to push that, who they are, they're just kind of like not even talk about it. Like, I'm just gonna show up here, I'm gonna do work, and just keep it moving.
That's a very good question. Yeah.
Because I feel like that's what we all get stuck doing, where it's like, if we work at these jobs where it's predominantly white, it's like we just end up going back to things as usual and just do the work, show up, and then bounce when the time's up. Like, do you have advice for people in those situations?
Yeah, I would just say that, I think it also depends on, your own personality. I happen to be very extroverted. And so I like to get to know people. I like to talk to people. I'm going to talk to people anywhere. Anywhere on the bus stop, wherever, I'm going to talk to people because I want to get to know them. But I think that it's also about, what you want to have. It can be scary for some people if you're the only person who's there to either bring up an issue or like talk to someone who might be different than you. But again, I think it's all about like connection and relationship. You tend to have the most healthy relationships with people that you know. And so maybe it just starts with a conversation. Maybe it starts with, let's have like a virtual lunch. Let's have like a little happy hour, where you can do like game night or something like that. If you have children, maybe you can connect over that. So you start off with something really small, and then you move from there. One thing that I always do in all my meetings when I have with people, I always do team builders or trust builders. I don't do any presentation. I don't do any conversation without them because I think that is how we break the ice and that is how we get to know people. So I actually have a book called 2,000 Questions, and I've gone through the book myself and I wrote down all the answers. It's really good questions, and so I'll throw a question out, and that gets the conversation going. And so that's kind of how it starts. I do remember doing some work with principals where we were getting ready to do cultural reality pedagogy, where you go into schools and you're really thinking about how to really talk to kids and how to really teach kids in a way that relates to their own culture, where they have student voice and choice. Whole nother topic. But the principal that I had happened to be Caucasian, and that wasn't a sticking point for us. It was just learning something new. And I'm the person getting ready to train you on how to do these things. And I remember starting off with the question. And the question was, tell me about like the third grade. Who was your favorite? Who was your teacher in third grade? And I remember that broke the ice. I was like, oh, I haven't thought about that in years. I talked about my third grade teacher. We're both educators. And so again, everything that we do connects the dots to what we're doing right now. So I think that's one thing you can do. If you are in a company that has an affinity group for different ethnicities or different groups. You can join one. You can ask to create one. Those are spaces where you can have conversations about those things. You can even potentially ask for some consultants to come in to do training. There are so many DEI consultants coming in now who are African American, who are able to come into companies and spaces that are looking to see what we can do. That's an idea you can suggest, to your company to be able to do as a way to have someone from the outside come in who can say the things that you want to be able to say that may not be able to be heard necessarily by you. So there are some things that you can do in terms of advocating.
Okay, and then one thing. So do you see the work? Because I feel like every generation has had the most brilliant minds and artists and spiritual leaders and just everything to lay it out beautifully what needs to be done, and we still find ourselves not getting it done. So with that, and it's Black History Month, and for me, it's like I've said it before, where it's like I love my heroes,
Yeah.
and my ancestors, but I always feel like it's kind of tricky between celebrating what the accomplishments, and also not putting it on the mantle and considering it done. And with that, it's like, what do you see the cumulative work, like where it moves towards a singular ultimate goal? Like I've talked about for myself, reparations is my ultimate goal. Do you have that kind of like focus where everything you're doing and all the people you're meeting with, is there an ultimate goal for yourself?
Yeah, several things. Side note, I used to work on Capitol Hill for the Black Caucus Foundation, and I did produce a publication on reparations for African Americans about 20 years ago. So I do understand the need to do many, many things. I think for me, it boils down to, personally, I am a parent, and so I want to make sure that what legacy I leave for my son is set up for him to not have to experience what mommy's had to experience, whether I had to experience discrimination, racism, nepotism, all those things you have on different jobs, and also be able to leave him a legacy of, look, this is what mommy was able to do. I was able to go into school systems, and I was able to impact the culture, impact kids to believe in themselves, to know that they can do X, Y, and Z. So for me, it's really about the legacy of kids. I literally want to reach like over 1 billion kids, letting them know that they matter, that their voices matter, that what their passions matter, that they themselves matter just because of who they are, because they were born, not because of anything else other than the fact that you are born, you are here, you have something that you can contribute to this world. So this is what it's about. So I can say that prior to even becoming a parent, I was doing that. Now being a parent is a little more heightened because I do have a Black male who is my son. And my expectation for him is that he's able to accomplish whatever he wants to do. So that's why I chose to even homeschool. So ultimately, it's really about me using my own voice and as my own platform for, you know what, I've worked in the field of law. Here's what we can do in this area. I worked in education, which has a huge impact on every type of field you can think about. That's my route. My route is through education, through kids, helping them to see X, Y, and Z, and through the adults who are working with the children to recognize and understand that, change your mentality around what they actually can do so that they can prove what you can do. And that's ultimately what it's really about. So it's day-by-day actions that are happening, whether it's, we're not having detention at this school. I advocated for no detention. Why? Detention does not change behavior. We know what ultimately happens with detention, suspension, jail. Absolutely not. That's not the route we need to have for our kids. So therefore, again, having a face in the place made the difference. If I'm African American, I'm going to have a different perspective on it than someone who is not. And so you think about those kinds of things. I think also just the conversation piece. I do know that there was I know at one point there was a situation where some Black Black boys were described as violent. And the year previous to that, there was a teacher, to my understanding, who asked for support and used the N-word to describe the kids. So again, that goes back to, having these conversations about the history of this country and why certain things cannot happen. Now, I specifically am working on behalf of Black kids and BIPOC kids, but we know the root of this country is that the Native Americans had their land stolen from them. So that's a part of our history that we need to acknowledge. The other part is that we had Africans who were enslaved, not slaves, but they were enslaved, brought to the United States. And as a result, we've been trying to get reparations, so to speak, or, equity and justice since then. So I think there are some really great things that are happening. And I really want to commend the Black Lives Matter movement, because that's what has really solidified so many things that we need to do.
Mhm.
I will also say the other reason why I switched my focus to anti-racism, specifically in trying to help as many schools and companies and nonprofits, is because I am a graduate of Jack Yates Senior High School. My high school was founded by Jack Yates, who was a former enslaved. And he specifically is a person who I had to do research. And I was like, oh, he founded my high school. He did this, he did that.
Yeah.
The same school that George Floyd went to, who my brother happened to be friends with. So at the end of the day, we have a huge legacy at Jack Yates Senior High School. We do not play around. We're very serious about the work that we're doing in our school. And so from then on, it's just important to know that there's so many motivations that I actually have just within my own family. I can keep talking all day, but my motivation is within for kids and for adults and for parents to understand what your kids can do. And for the record, I'm a parent of an autistic child. So my autistic child does not take medication, does not do anything. I have been supporting my child since day one. My son has been growing, has been doing a great job of developing all the skill sets that he needs to be able to have, because he has a loving and caring mother. And there are many other parents out there like me as well. So that's my other motivation.
So I would say, because I like that. And thank you for sharing that, because I feel like that's one of the things that I really want to explore in my time. Time is short. We blink an eye and our time is done. But while I'm here, it's like my mission is Black mental health and exploring it in ways that we haven't. And neurodivergent, that's something is like it's a frontier where it's like we really haven't dived into it enough. And in a general cultural perspective. Where it's like it's on the level of hip hop, it's on the level of the streets. Is we got to have a collective understanding of mental health in a deeper sense, and it's like we listen to the dopest lyrics and lyricists, but we don't understand like they're dope for a reason. It's like there's brilliance in us.
Yes.
But if we don't understand mental health, then we start falling for the same traps that we always fall for. And that's kind of where, to relate it back to what you were saying, is like I do feel like we're a bridge, like we're kind of like this period of who we are. This is for the people to come,
right?
And the kids that are coming up now is like, I am who I am right now. It's like, but the kids, what are we gonna leave them? And the ones that haven't been born yet, what are we leaving them? And that's where it's like, to me, the ultimate goal is always that continue to advance, continue to do the work. And with neurodivergent, like what have you learned in your time?
Just from my son. I mean, first of all, I have the mantra now that all kids can learn. I knew it before, but I definitely know it now. You can't tell me that all kids can read, all kids can write, all kids can do math, all kids can do social studies, all kids can travel. I think it's really about developing what kids really want to do, their passions. So, for instance, in my home, we call it cool school. Cool school. We are learning things that my son wants to learn, not what mommy wants to teach, but I'm also embedding those academic skills and those life skills and things we need to be able to do. So I think one thing is that my son is very interested in becoming an astronaut, being a chef, being an oceanographer. So we literally study these things. We were literally watching live, the footage of what was happening in the Pacific Ocean last week. And we were just talking about like the things that are happening, things that are going on. So absolutely kids can learn. I think that it showed me that the kids that I work with, those that did have IEPs and those that did not, are all equal.
Yeah.
It's about how you treat those kids. And if you're paying very, very close attention to what makes them tick, what makes them smile, what makes them joyful, what makes them happy, not just delivering the same old lesson every day or coming in with, okay, I got to do X, Y, and Z. Nope. Today. So a good example of that can be, a kid came to me upset with a teacher once. Teachers do a great job, by the way, hands down, doing a great job. But it was interesting because he said, Ms. Davis, so-and-so wanted me out of the classroom because I didn't do an assignment. And the first question I said was, it was in the morning. I said, have you had breakfast? He was like, no. and I wanted to eat. I said, oh, so that's what it was. So I went and I got the kid a banana. Here you go. Here's a banana. Walked back to class. We sat down and did the work. And I told the teacher he just wanted something to eat.
Mm-hmm.
Always ask. Don't assume that a kid doesn't want to do anything. We don't know every kid's situation. And I've worked with all kinds of kids, from those that had lots of money to those that may have unfortunately wanted to, commit suicide. So I've had to have those conversations with families and parents. And so I understand that the root is the heart of what we do. It is, who are you as a person? The connection that you're making to kids and to people, it matters. When you say good morning, when you say hello, when you ask someone how they're doing, don't just assume things about them. All that plays into what you were talking about, mental health, which is why in my household, we know we're about the business of every day. If we make, we're doing our work, we're doing our affirmations, we're making sure we're doing everything. And mommy, and it's known that mommy can make mistakes. Hey, sweetie, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do X, Y, and Z. Mommy has to learn from that. My son knows mommy makes mistakes, but mommy's also a very good mommy and she's loving, but he needs to understand this is a part of life. I'm telling him, hey, this is how you take the trash out. This is how you tie it, that mommy can make mistakes and that we can do the same thing as well. So I think that it's also about like recognizing just the human heart and what love is. And at the core of it, that's what this is really all about. And I've learned so many things from kids and from teachers across the time that I've been here. And also, of course, just being, in the legal field, working in law firms and government, I've seen so many things on paper about this is what we should have, but it needs to be played out in terms of relationship with people.
What do you see like moving out of this pandemic as with the relationship between parents, kids, teachers, and then you have the administrators? Like that whole
the number one thing that I hope comes out of this, which is what I was saying before, is that everybody has to be a part of the conversation. Everybody, it can't be the school does this and administrators do this and then parents do this. It has to be a combination. And at the center of it are students. Some things I mentioned in our presentation were that students should sit on the Student Government Association and they should be in meetings with the principal.
Dang.
Bring them into the meeting. Ask them their opinions about what they think. Ask them their opinions about X, Y, and Z. It should be feedback to teachers on instruction. I did everything I'm talking about. I did, which is why I was a highly effective instructor, which is why I did very well in supporting kids, not only enjoying school, but also passing these tests like the PARCC and the STAR exam. It matters. And so go ahead.
I was gonna say that's kind of I didn't even think about that. Kids should be governing like, hey, this is what we need. Let me give you feedback so you can better help me.
Absolutely.
Help me help you, help me help you.
That's how you have a winning combination of school. It's typically sometimes the other way around, but if you really listen to children, they will tell you what's needed and they will tell you their thoughts, and they'll be able to give you a lot of information. So I think so I hope after this pandemic, number one, we understand how to use virtual instruction. I have been using it prior to COVID, so I already knew how to use Zoom and all that good stuff. But I learned how to do new things, like Google and all that stuff in Teams. I think I would like to see every single kid in our country have access to the internet, have access to computers, and able to really use that technology to help our kids to really engage and to understand, what they can do. Let's not just give them math and reading assignments. Let's give them some additional assignments that really get them to research and find out careers that they might want to go into, or the businesses that they might want to own. Or colleges that they may want to go to. Everybody has a choice of what they can do. So why not make it an equal level playing field? And I'd like to see some of the school districts that do not have a large representation of African-American students or teachers. I still would like to see them break down those curriculums and really audit them to see where they can embed more Black authors or, Native American authors or what have you, so they can see more.
Would you be an advocate for because I know there's a lot of to have a federal level of what am I trying to say, of federal level of like some kind of Black history.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
absolutely. Yes.
And like with the 1619 project, it's like stuff like that where
it's been criticized, of course, from some of the school districts have said they felt like that information was inaccurate. It is accurate. So is what has happened. So yeah, that would be amazing to have that. And I actually honestly would like us to look at the testing system. I'm not necessarily a huge proponent of standardized testing. I think that it is not always equal when it comes to kids of color. And I think that there are alternative ways to assess our kids. We can have them do writing. We can have them do speaking, oral presentations. We can have them do research. There are many ways that kids can demonstrate their knowledge, and not only just their knowledge, but what they have learned from it in the community. Yeah. So it's all about, again, I'm just going to do my little plug for these 4 domains, should be in every school system: identity, diversity, justice, and action. They come from Learning for Justice, formerly known as Teaching Tolerance. And that is a great framework to use to start thinking about how you want to have that, not just in your schools, on your leadership team. You want to have that with families, and you also want to have that in the content and the curriculum kids are actually learning.
So this is a side note, but so this podcast always also explored mental health, like with the person I'm talking to. So how do you, everything you're doing, how do you stay healthy mentally and physically? Like how are you managing your everyday life?
Yeah, number one, I'm gonna say I'm a special needs parent. So I'm going to say, first of all, kudos to all the parents out there. I don't think many people recognize and understand the amount of love and attention we have to give to our kids, which is different than kids who do not necessarily have special needs like autism. And so I am already on the board of the Texas Autism Society. And so I shoot out information and strategies for families that I actually use. So here's what I do. I have a bike. And I ride on the bayou when it's not raining and snowing in Texas every day. I drink water every single day. I make sure that I eat vegetables, and I've started eating some, I always eat organic, but I've started doing some vegan meals. I do my Epsom salt lavender baths, which are amazing. So you need to be able to bring your essential oils into the house. And I definitely read my Bible and I pray because I am a believer of Christ, and I believe that I have a passion for what I want to be able to do. And I watch comedies. I love to laugh.
Yeah.
Jokes. Anybody tell you around me, I love to talk. So those are the things that I actually do on a daily basis that really do support and help me, because I want to make sure that I am good and healthy, not just for myself, but also for my son.
That's beautiful. Thank you. And then now so with everything we talked about, I would say one thing, when we talked before, we talked about like where you go to administrations that are predominantly white. Now, how do you approach that kind of situation where it's like you might have the percentage is like 1% Black indigenous youth, and they're going to have identity crisis and need that some kind of people to like, oh, they understand me, thank God, it's like they're going to need something like that. How do you approach that, where it's like you might not have the support of the administration, but the need is still there?
It depends on where I'm going in as, because I consult and train. Usually people are open to listening to what I have to say. But even if I wasn't, I still would do that in my role. Number one, all schools are looking at data. They want to prove that they're the school, that they're doing a great job as a school in terms of preparing kids for, their tests and things that they're doing, whatever that might be. So the other part is, number two, they're concerned about their students. So who is in your student body? Take note of what cultures are represented in your student body. If you have one Native American student, then yes, you do have a responsibility to ensure that their culture, their identity, their voice is embedded into the work that you're actually doing. So, I mean, you can appeal on different levels. Number one, your data is going to definitely be stronger when you are really approaching your work from the lens of being an anti-racist, anti-bias as well. Number two, you want to think about who are you representing? Who are your stakeholders? And people say that everyone else is stakeholder, but number one are your kids. The students are the number one stakeholders. Without kids, there's no school.
Yeah.
Think about that. Think about them and their families and what those families might need. So that's what I would look at as two things to consider. And then I would appeal to people who want to do this work. It's easier to have the conversation with people who are like, I want to do the work. I don't know where to start. Where do I start? That's amazing. And I would say shout out to the New Jersey school district leaders. I just had a conversation with them, and they're all about the business of making sure that they are representing their kids. So you have these districts who are really open and ready for it. And I love that, because that's what we want to have more of. So I think those are some approaches you can take. And then, of course, there's the technical stuff, like you could do the inquiry approach where you ask questions to get them to understand like where they are and build upon that. And then you present what you want to be able to share.
Here's another question, like, because I feel like it's easy, especially as a Black person, that like sometimes you forget about the achievements or what's been done. It's like, because I can only see so much, I can only hear about so much. So it's like I don't know a lot of like what the work that's been done before last year, and then also what's been inspired by last year of what's actually taking place in these school systems, because I don't know. So it's like, can you share some kind of the positives that have come out of
Yeah. I definitely can say that it was great here in Houston. We were able to have kids set up with computers that needed to have those computers here. I know in different parts of the country, the same thing happened. They made sure their kids got internet access, Chromebooks. There were companies that were able to donate and give towards different school systems that may have needed those things. I also saw a real shift in pretty much the majority of school systems wanting to figure out, how do we really lift up our African American students? What do we do for our team and our staff? How do we train them? What kinds of materials can we utilize? What kinds of resources can we utilize? So that was great to have those on hand. Thank goodness for the people who had already created some of those documents and items to be able to use. I also saw some companies like the Close-Up Foundation I used to work with. They've always done a great job of being nonpartisan, but their information has always been just stellar from day one. And I wanted to shout out Newzella. Newzella has gone through, and they have really great information on their site as well that really speaks to just anti-racism. Lots of resources. There are two great professional developers there. They work on this. They even have created a professional learning for teachers of different ethnicities and taking you through an anti-racist journey of how to become a better educator. And I think also just parents speaking up, parents advocating for the needs of their kids, and lots of people turn into homeschool for whatever reasons, but also like really working together. Lots of groups online on Facebook and Instagram that are really helping each other in terms of figuring out, what do we do to really support kids, and what do we do to really support what's happening in the real world? And then waking up. I think just the wake up.
Yeah.
I've always known that racism has been an issue in this country. Now it's a matter of, unfortunately, the murders and the deaths that have taken place. It has woken us up to realize that we do really have to do something. So it was like a shake almost. We also had African Americans, as we've always been, protesting peacefully in places to get change. For what's needed, so that when I walk outside the house, I don't have to fear that my son potentially can be, unfortunately killed because of his skin color. So it's like educating educating all the departments about, bias and privilege and stereotyping and all the things that you want to be able to kind of get rid of and just move away from and shift away from, so that we recognize, who we are as individuals and who we want to be.
Now, another question, as far as for me, I think one of the things that is most overlooked whenever there's a wave of so I love this term, because somebody said there's a person's reframed it where it was like, because it's always called social unrest, but it's really social outrage and hurt. And ever since I heard that, it just rings in my head, like it's not unrest. It's like it's outrage for what you see, and it's hurt that it keeps happening.
Right.
So one of the things that I've noticed as I start seeing people get that have done like the Capitol riots, the failed coup, is like, and watching how they're handled, and they get to go on vacation. The woman that called in to try to get to do the bird watcher. False report. One of the things I'm noticing is like we still don't really check the judges. Like we still don't understand how to research and figure out who are these judges. And I was reading some, but I feel like there's still a disconnect between the movement and what we're trying to do and trying to create lasting change, and how the judge systems, because we don't know, it's all in the gray. And since you have a legal background,
Yeah.
can you share any light on how, as a citizen, as somebody that's Black, that won't change for people, how do you address the judges that blatantly will over sentence Black and brown and indigenous people, and then under sentence people that actually doing dirt? Like how do you kind of? I'm rambling, but judges.
No, and I got it. It's it depends on the state you live in the city. So in some cities and states, judges are elected. So clearly the vote, hands down, voting is super, super important. And I think also running for office is something I think that for whatever those qualifications are, people can do that. And the same thing would apply not just for judges, but also for people who are in state houses, state senates, excuse me, city councils, mayors. All those roles have people that are up for election. And so it's about making sure that you are in tune to what they're talking about. You have access to them. They have websites, they have Instagram accounts, they have Twitter accounts, they have Facebook accounts. You can go down and talk with them. You can watch city council, you can watch, judges and things of that nature online. So number one, who's being elected, and looking at their record and being able to advocate for people who you want to have in those positions, or advocating for people who are making decisions that you feel are not appropriate decisions on behalf of people of color. So I think that's one route to go. But it's also about staying involved and engaged. So I know like Color of Change always sends out, alerts so people know what's happening, what's going on. We still have the NAACP. We have the National Urban League. So you have these places that are still doing really good work. People may or may not know about. And of course, you have Black Lives Matter chapters that you can look into to be able to see. So I think that's one way. But I think as a citizen, it's just about being informed, and not getting your news source from just one source, getting your news source from multiple sources and making your own decisions and your own opinions about what you think is important. And what I would really like to see, and I've always said this, I would love to see Congress represent America. I would love to see it be more BIPOC persons represented in those spots, because again, that's where the decisions are made, whether it's the head of a company's leadership team, a school's leadership team, the White House. All those spaces and places have to have people who can bring a diverse perspective or point of view. And if you can get people to run for those positions and be appointed in those positions, then I think that would make a huge point. I can say for myself, one thing that I've decided to do once I came back home is I plan to run for office. Absolutely. I've always wanted to do it, but now I'm just like, I'm back in my hometown. I love it a lot. And
you just made an announcement on Fight the Funk. Hold on.
When I decide what it's going to be, you will know. But I've been thinking about just like, school board, mayor, state government, because I've been in these spaces and places. And I actually have some very good friends that are doing great work, Black men, Black women, who are doing great work already in the city of Houston specifically, because that's my hometown. They're doing amazing work, and I'm really proud of the work that they're doing. So seeing what they're able to accomplish and also seeing the gaps that we have, it just gives you another opportunity to say, oh, I can make a difference as well. And for those who are interested, and maybe you don't want to run for office, you can also volunteer. Again, you can be, advocacy works. Advocacy matters and it works. And I think, and I know that we're still trying to get justice in certain cases and certain issues, but if we can have the right people in the right spaces with integrity, making the decisions and doing the work, it will make a difference in the outcome for not just ourselves, but also for children.
Okay. And then we run up on time. One more question, because I feel like we take our eyes off the ball when it's not voting time. Like as we all are getting back to and being active, how do you keep an eye on like right now gerrymandering is happening, voter suppression, like all the levers are being pulled, all the games are being played right now, and it's not in front of us anymore because it's not a voting, like we're not getting ready to vote, but it's like that's when the moves are made, when we're living our everyday life. Is there any way that you on a daily basis that people can help work against gerrymandering and work against voter suppression that happens? That's because every day is those moves are being made.
Yeah, I remember teaching my students way back in the 8th grade. They're now in college, yay! But I remember telling them back then that they do have voices too. I think it's a personal responsibility that you have to get yourself involved in the way that makes the most sense for you and for your family. I think families should galvanize around making sure everybody's able to vote. And I think also another area is just like thinking about like, what can you do? You know, there's deputy voter registrars. I used to be one, you know, back in the day when I was here in my city as a younger person. And I was able to, not that I'm old now, I'm not. my hair since I was 16, by the way. So no, I was going to say, but basically it's about making sure that you can do different things. You can be a deputy voter registrar. You can work with Operation Big Vote. You can still watch different news sets. There's BBC, there's CNN, there's Fox. I mean, so the goal is, and people may not like to watch some of these spaces, but you want to know what's going on. You still want to get online, see the newspaper. And if you go and get involved with your person who represents your district, your city council person, your state rep person, your county person, your judges, if you build relationships with these people and kind of learn like their track record and what they're doing, everything's online. You go to house.gov, go to senate.gov. It'll tell you who senators are, what they're voting in, their records, what they do. If they have Senate bills that are up, you can go online and you can see, I mean, again, you can see all these things. I only know this because I worked in DC. I worked in various spaces where you can have access to that information. And now that we are pretty much online because of COVID worldwide, you're able to get online and kind of find the information out as well. So that's something that's really great. I mean, there's so many great people doing so much good work out here. Hop on Facebook, hop on Instagram, type in Google. You will find that you need about any topic that you want to know about. So like gerrymandering is very important for a whole lot of other issues. But everybody right now is in COVID and they're thinking about what's the issue that's most important to me. And it's still about making sure, you know, you have some head in the family who is ensuring that those conversations are happening. I know in my family, we are on text messaging. We do virtual meetups and we're talking about, you know, what's going on, what's happening, you know, and then we learn from each other.
That's dope. That's dope. And I really love that you saying that, because like for me, I just feel like it's important to, like, I was in a meeting for the Measure J that went through in LA, you know, 10% reallocation of funds to the community. And it's like, and I know there's that feeling of this ain't happening fast enough. Is not coming to, like, you know, as kids in foster care, as kids, the black male population is so high and over criminalized in LA. And it's like, we're not doing enough. And it's like, how do you, because you've been doing the work diligently. How do you continue to do the work knowing that there's people in pain every day and waiting to come home, and they are healthy, they are ready, they will, you know, that, you know, there's people that will contribute to society in a healthy way. Is like, how do you pace, not pace yourself, but do what you need to do and be like, okay, no, I'm doing my part. I don't know how to say it.
How do I keep going? How do I stay motivated? How do I keep doing what I'm doing?
Well, not like because I'm motivated. You motivate. You know, it's not about that, but just it's knowing that it's trying to do the work isn't fast enough. You know, it's like all the work is more.
Well, you know, I know I have I see my timer over here, but I was going to say, I think it's really about, you know, I've had family members that have been incarcerated for numbers of years. So I've been on that end. I would say that, and the reason I say it's even still staying motivated is because I do know of these stories, I do know these situations, but I also know that I think about what's the one thing I can do, you know, this week, this day, this hour, to do X, Y, and Z. So even though I do work, I'm also doing other work on behalf of, you know, my people that I think is going to ultimately make an impact. I believe in order for any type of change to occur, one must be willing to think on a different level and view from a different perspective. And that's what it's really about. And making sure, again, that I'm healed and that I'm as whole as possible and doing the work, not just physically, but mentally, to keep getting up every day doing this sort of work. And so I think that's what's most important when it comes down to it, because you can't solve every problem, but you can definitely solve some problems if you put your voice out there and you put heads together and you work together to get it done.
That's well said. Like I think that's the ending right there. I don't want to put, the bam, that's that. You dropping the mic. That's it. So I say thank you so much for through and this has been a dope conversation. And I think it's enlightening for a lot of people and helping a lot of people, especially like when we get into the muck of it and not knowing like where have all our effort gone. So just hearing you talk and sharing your experiences and also shining light on the achievements and as we keep moving forward. I can't thank you enough for being on the show. Thank you so much.
I'm definitely going to share about the work that you're doing, because I think it's important to get the word out about mental health, especially in our African American communities. It is needed, especially during this time frame. So absolutely, I'll be sharing your site as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. Okay, bye.
All right.